Hello everybody, hello everyone, hello everybody and everyone. Welcome back to another episode. In this episode I want to talk about this camera, the Canon R8. I've owned this camera for over a year now. I bought it when I started freelancing and I've used it as my main camera ever since then, until just recently when I purchased the Canon R6 Mark II, which is what this video is being filmed on. I will run you through a few specs. I'll give you my own opinions, pros and cons after using it for a year, and I will show some sample stills and some sample footage. So it's a full frame mirrorless camera, as I said. It's got a 24.2 megapixel sensor, which can shoot up to 6 FPS with the first curtain shutter and 40 FPS with the electronic shutter. You can shoot 4K at up to 60 frames per second in C-Log 3, and you can shoot slow motion at 180 frames per second at 1080p, which is fairly industry standard at this point. But in a body this size, I think that's very impressive. It's absolutely tiny.
That's what she said.
The camera came out in 2023, so it's still very new at this point. I think it's actually newer than the R6 Mark II. Let me just check that. Yes, it's newer than the R6 Mark II, which is now my main body, so whatever. But it's basically the same camera as the R6 Mark II, minus a few quite important things, depending on what you're doing with it. So technically speaking, it's a very good camera. It's got all the modern day needs basically. 24 megapixels, 4K, fairly decent slow motion. The size of the camera is probably one of its main selling points, and originally why I bought it. I was never planning on going into freelancing with it. It was more, I want a smaller camera to travel with, because the 7D I was using before was not pocketable. However, this is pocketable depending on the lens. If you put something like a 24-105 f4 on it, it's not going to fit in your pocket because you also need to use the adapter. But if you want to stick on just a little RF mount 50mm, you can put it in your pocket all day long. Not a jean pocket, but a coat pocket. It will go right in there. You see? Another massive selling point of this camera is the price. These are incredibly affordable. You can pick one of these up for £1,000. I don't know what that is in dollarage. I'll put that somewhere. Second hand, £1,000, maybe less. And for what you get, that is pretty insane, I think. Ergonomics are actually really good for such a small camera. I don't have massive hands, but they're not tiny either. So if you have normal size hands, you won't have any issue using this camera. Everything's in a good place, everything feels right. Especially if you use Canon anyway, things are just where they're supposed to be. Also, another one of my favorite things, the switch from changing from photo to video is just really good. I think not that I've used Sony cameras before, and that's on the dial, and on the older generation of the R cameras, that was the on-off switch, and again, I think you had the on-off, the video photo switch over there, which is no, it's a big thing. I just like it. Lens choice is a little bit sparse on Canon RF mount at the moment, but EF RF adapter, and you've got yourself thousands of lenses to choose from. All these good things being said, there are 3 main cons, in my opinion. Not even in my opinion, they're just cons. There is no IBIS, which when you only have this camera is fine because you get used to it. But since I've upgraded to the R6 II and I have discovered IBIS, life has just got much easier. But like I say, there's ways around that. There's digital image stabilization, which is good. You obviously get a bit of a crop, but you're still recording in 4K, so, and if you have a gimbal or use a gimbal, there's gimbals to use to stabilize your footage. The second con, and this is my least favorite, is that the batteries are absolutely tiny. If you're shooting a wedding, filming, commissioned / commercial / whatever work, what you're being paid for, it's a pain in the ass because you're constantly swapping out batteries. I think you can do at a push around 400 photos to a battery, which is poor. Filming for a longer period of time, you will be swapping out batteries a lot more. Again, which is fine because you can use an external power source, but then you've got a much bulkier camera body, which is sort of half the joy of using this camera is it being so small. So you take away from that then as well. The final negative thing, which some people think is a massive no-no these days, is it's only got one card slot. I think that's personal preference if you are against that or not. It definitely made shooting weddings a bit like iffy. There's always a chance your card could corrupt, but it's so unlikely, especially if you treat your cards well and you buy high quality cards anyway. It's pretty much not going to happen. But then having 2 card slots is just peace of mind in that sort of area. So there was 2 things I forgot to mention now I've watched back through in the edit. The first thing, which is another pro, is the autofocus. Absolutely phenomenal. Locks on, does what you need, can rely on it. Trusty autofocus, can't go wrong. The second thing I forgot to mention, which is a con, again, which is another thing I didn't really realise until I got the R6 II, is the lack of the joystick on the back. It's not a deal breaker at all, by any means. It's just a nice thing to have. So hopefully that was enough information. And hopefully you go and buy yourself one of these because they're bloody great if you can overlook those 3 little things. Yeah. Thank you very much for watching, and I shall see you in the next one.